Over a year ago, two weekly newspapers joined countless numbers of weekly local publications around the country and closed the Rivertowns Enterprise and the Scarsdale Inquirer. A lot of people, including myself, were really devastated because we depend on local newspapers to find out what's going on, to learn about the community, to learn about people living in the town, and to find out what issues people are concerned about. So fortunately, the good news is Allison Schultz started a new publication that took over from the Rivertowns Enterprise called Rivertowns Dispatch. I have it over here. Mm-hmm. And it's a weekly publication, and it really serves a great need. And maybe you could just tell us what motivated you to start a weekly newspaper.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks so much for having me on and for doing this show. The first and most important reason why I did this is I love local news as a reader. When the Enterprise existed, I used to get it every week, sit on my couch on Saturday and read what was going on. It was important for me when I first moved here too, to get a sense of the community and who lived here and what was happening. At the time I was commuting into the city, so I was really looking for places where I had that local connection, and I got a lot of that through the paper. Second, also important reason, as a citizen, it's really important. There's nobody else who's writing the stories about what is happening in our towns and in our villages, in our schools, and in the communities. I got the really good piece of advice once when I was looking at starting the paper. Hey, you should probably just Google the topic that you're going to be covering. And if there's a lot of other stories that are already covering this topic, maybe you don't need to start a paper. For the types of stuff that we do, like a flood at the Hastings Middle School, that's not covered in many other places, if anywhere at all. And it's really important to our readers and our people here that they know what's happening.
Is it difficult to succeed as a publisher? Because most of the weekly publications around the country are folding, and now you're starting a weekly newspaper when a lot of people have given up.
Yeah, it is incredibly difficult to succeed. There's many more headwinds than tailwinds, and this is something that I knew going into this. One possibly funny anecdote is one of the small business softwares that I use for some of our accounting. I was talking to the representative when I started, and they said, what business are you in? They cover all small businesses. I said, I'm starting a local newspaper. This woman said, I talk to about 40 small businesses a day, every day. I've never talked to another newspaper. So just anecdotal, but it is very much against the trend to be opening a local newspaper right now instead of closing one. My belief is if local news, first of all, local news is incredibly valuable. I like it and we need it. Second, I think if local news is gonna work anywhere, it works in places like the Rivertowns with engaged readers, small businesses that have interesting stories to tell and want to come advertise in the paper, subscribers who, we were in a fortunate spot where there's not a lot of convincing for subscribers why local news is important. It's more, the challenge is more telling people that we exist and how to subscribe. We're up to about over 1,600 subscribers. Which is about 3/4 of the way to where we want to be in terms of subscribers.
That's amazing. Yeah. How did you get your so many people subscribing?
Good question. A lot of it has been through word of mouth and the strength of the articles. Like when we hit a topic that then a text chain is all talking about, oh, here's what's going on. Oh, the newspaper exists, I gotta be there. So I think first and most important is just the strength of what we're covering and being topical to what's on the minds of the people that live here, and doing that every single week is the most important thing we do. Then there's, of course, the marketing, simply getting the word out, showing up at our farmers markets, and really important, and festivals and various things that happen in the community, being a presence in the community. And then the last one is working with the really strong existing organizations to help get the word out.
When you talk about, say, the farmers markets,
Yeah.
will you have like a booth and sometimes give people like old copies of the paper so they could see what they're missing?
You got it. And farmers markets, festivals, I think you and I talked at the Ferry Festa,
Right.
where we had what we were doing last year is just letting people come and tell us what they want to see in a local paper. What we'll be doing more of this year is specific questions in those locations, like we run a weekly poll on the front cover of the paper.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's always people putting their opinions in online, but what we'll start to do more of this summer is let people do that from Jazz Festival, from the farmers market, something like that.
That's really great. You also have a kids section.
Yeah.
And could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that is the Little Dispatch. It's run by a local educator named Becky Pitts, and it is an after-school club that kids join and learn how to write and illustrate for a newspaper. And once a month, the first week of the month, we run the kids' work in the paper.
That's great. I was reading the kids section, I guess last week. It's called The Little Dispatch over here, and it really is, it's really great. And I'm sure the parents are probably buying extra copies and sending it to everybody in their families.
Yeah, you got it. Having kids in the paper is both really fun and it's pretty good for business too.
That is great. Are there any other like innovations that you're thinking of?
Yeah, so
that other papers don't do, like the polling? I don't know of other newspapers that have done it. Also, when you do the polls, are you thinking of, say, asking businesses, if they would, like having a box and having a weekly poll saying sponsored by the Rivertowns Dispatch, and then, getting more feedback from people who may not even know of your publication?
Oh, yeah, that's a great idea. So I'm going to answer the first question first on the other innovation piece. We have, will start to come out soon, a high school version of that Little Dispatch, where a couple of journalists who live in the Rivertowns have volunteered to help mentor high school kids. So we've reached out to all the high school papers to ask who wanted to be involved. And they get to be together about once a month, and the kids brought topics that they would want to run both in their high school paper and in the Dispatch. And these journalists are helping kids refine their stories so we can run them in the Dispatch.
Yeah, we just started last year a Greenburgh Student News Network, and we've had
cool.
a couple students. They tape a monthly show, and it's actually really fabulous, because I sort of feel that it's hard for publications to hire all these reporters to cover the news, and if you get students involved, it could supplement what a newspaper could afford to pay.
That's right, and just the diversity of topics as well. Like for both the Little Dispatch and the high school version, it's very much led by the kids of what you want to be writing about. We have we have an editor and 2 full-time staff writers who are covering the basics of what needs to be there. So this is a little bit of a wider room for kids to come up with what's interesting to them. Like, for example, the paper you just showed of the Little Dispatch, the lead story there was comparing school lunches across the 4 schools and how much time the kids had for research. So it started off as like talking about the food, but then the writer there really went into like, okay, how much time do each one of these kids have, and got into some policy stuff in a very kid-led way, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, because I've always worked with a lot of students, and I was saying it would be interesting to get their feel on, say, youth officers, or how police deal with drug problems in schools, or racism, or bigotry, bullying. Those are issues that are interesting. Do you? You don't have editorials, right? The Enterprise ran editorials, and how come you decided not to have your own editorial opinions?
Yeah, great question. So what we have on our editorial page is people writing in for letters to the editor, but we don't do an unsigned editorial for more practical reasons than philosophical reasons. Of all of the things that we think people want to hear from and what we want to create every week, the unsigned editorial, it wasn't high enough on the list of the things that we could be creating. I personally am more interested in having the paper reflect the voices of the community than just be the microphone out. So it was extremely important to me that we keep the letters to the editor. And you asked about innovation pieces. Other places where people can submit content in that we can be running is hugely important to me. Having the unsigned editorial that is kind of the voice from nowhere was not high on the list of the things that we wanted to keep. You can subscribe at rivertownsdispatch.com/membership. All of our subscriptions are online just because it is so much more efficient. We really run this thing on a shoestring, and you can process it all online at a fraction of the cost.
Oh, that is really great. Some of your stories are posted online that anybody could look at, and some obviously aren't.
That's right. The way we think about it is that the main thing that people are subscribing to is the full print edition that comes out each week, and then online is incredibly important to us as well. But what we use that for is telling stories quickly. So we do a lot of our sports stories. We'll put them up on Instagram earlier in the week, Instagram and Facebook, and creating something that people can share around. This is wonderful, but it's hard to share. So the stories that we think that really want to be shared among the community, we put up on the website. The website just requires people to put in their email addresses. It doesn't require payment on it. That's why we don't put everything up there.
Right. Do you have internship opportunities for students?
We do. We have our intern. We take one each season. We have the summer intern all set up already. Probably be looking for someone next fall. The intern supports on a lot of the operations side of the paper. And runs our social media presence. So it's a pretty good way for people to get involved. But the internship isn't the only way that people can get involved too. Like I mentioned, we have the high school dispatch program, and then we want to be doing so much more with the submitted content as well. So if you run across people, or you are people who are interested in having their stuff show up in the paper, we love getting everything from letters to the editor coming in. We also like to publish life stage events because we want to celebrate with people on births, on marriages. We run obituaries. Some of, I think, our really touching pieces have been obituaries. And then we also, you're asking about innovation pieces before, have a feature that we will be doing more with called Ask the Dispatch, where we're just taking questions from the community on what do you want the answer to? What's the thing that you've always wanted to know about how our community runs that's really bugging you that you don't have the answer for? It's either something that our staff knows or can spend some time looking into.
Yeah, sometimes when I read your paper, I just cut it out and I figure I'll refer to it later on, and then I find it really, really useful, and I like that feature because sometimes they'll ask questions, and I had never even thought of that. I think you did some things on history.
Oh yeah, the presidential history.
That I remember.
There was a lot I learned from that one too.
Yeah, I didn't realize there were so many presidents who had an impact on Greenburgh life. Another question I had is the Rivertowns Dispatch took over from the Enterprise, but they also had a sister publication, the Scarsdale Inquirer, and they don't have. There's now the Scarsdale Insider, Scarsdale 105.3, but it's all digital. Have you thought of expanding to cover the rest of the town?
Good question. And to clarify, we didn't take over for the Enterprise. We just
replaced it.
We started a thing totally separately in its place. That question comes up sometimes.
Right.
So just to clarify on that. What I'm really focused on right now is doing the Rivertowns justice with a local paper and having something that is sustainable for the Rivertowns. If this works well and we figure out a model that could work in other places, that's long-term interesting to me. I've worked in media a lot of my career, and we always figure out, okay, how can you build something that makes more money than it costs? And then if you can do that, can you do it again?
What type of experience did you have in the media before?
Yeah, so I worked a lot in advertising, and then on the digital side in subscription development and advertising development, always for websites, apps, and social media. Most recently, before this, I was at Bloomberg Media doing that.
Oh, so this is should be easy for you, right?
Well, not exactly easy. It's the job of publisher is one where it's like chief cook and bottle washer. So everything soup to nuts of the whole how the paper works, from getting the subscriptions, getting the list of subscribers out every week, to the printer, to making all the operations work. That's the hat. Those are the many hats that I wear all the time. So it's a pretty fun thing to be doing, but I wouldn't call it easy, no.
Are the costs of paper going up now, especially with some of the foreign national policies?
Good question. Paper cost increases haven't hit us yet. Our printer kind of hasn't reset their prices yet. They buy the paper, we print with them, and they deliver it out to us. I hope it doesn't, because like I said, we got more headwinds than tailwinds. I don't want another headwind there.
I remember after the Enterprise closed, I was saying to somebody, local governments took ads out, legal ads.
Yeah.
But there's all these state laws that make it difficult for a new publication to get the revenue.
Yeah.
And there's more people that probably read the Rivertowns Dispatch or would see a legal ad than if it was published in, say, LOHUD. Because so I'm sort of wondering, is there a move to persuade the state to change the law to make it easier for newspapers like yours to get legal advertising?
Yeah, the detail on that is it takes a full year from when you start printing, as I understand it, before you count as a publication that can accept legal ads. There's some gray area on this where an assessor comes forward with an opinion about how to interpret the law, which is written more vaguely. But to the best of my knowledge, it takes a full year from when the publication starts printing to when it can be running the ads. I wish it was sooner. That means next September is the first that we'll be able to run those. I don't know of a broader movement of trying to push for that timeline to be sooner. There aren't a lot of publications that are starting up new. So any incentive for starting up new publications is great. Some of the things that are going on at the state level, though, have been pretty good for us. Like there was a bill passed last year that gives a tax credit to publications that employ full-time journalists, which has been a huge, or has the opportunity to be a very large boost for us, and helped guide the sustainability of the strategy that Tim Lamort and I had of hiring full-time people to work on this rather than only relying on freelancers.
And how many reporters do you have?
Two.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, and it's so hard to get a job in the media, so they must be really smart.
Yes, they're very smart and good. Amy Bachner, who's a Scarsdale resident, and she covers Hastings and Ardsley, and then Julian Caldwell, who grew up in Dobbs Ferry, covers Dobbs and Irvington.
Yeah, and Julian has a very interesting background also.
Yeah.
He was telling me all the things he's done with music and...
Yeah, he has an amazing music career, as well as being a full-time journalist.
That is great. Do you find that since you're starting, let's say you find that there's scandals in a local government or whatever, would you shy away from it, or is there any, or you basically the reporters have free reign to?
I mean, this is literally our job to cover these things if they arise. So we will absolutely be covering them. We have to have good sources on it. We have to fact check. But if we have credible information that's verified on what's happening, of course we'll publish it. And that's our job to do.
What's your favorite stories that have appeared in your paper since you've been in, and what are you so surprised at what people like and what people don't like? I know in the town sometimes I could do something that I think is like amazing and nobody cares, and sometimes there'll be something that I think, oh, nobody's going to really care, and then I'm surprised at the positive reaction or negative reaction.
Yeah, great question. A couple of my favorite stories lately are really ones that show that I think the tapestry of the Rivertowns, and whether it be individual people or a group of people talking about a topic together. Like one of my favorites lately was we did a story on the changing policy on cell phones in schools. And I will say, as a parent, every parent that I know is thrilled for the concept of there being a bell-to-bell ban, K through 12, which is Governor Hochul's proposal. Julian wrote the story on this, and he talked to parents, and then he talked to administration as well. And the administration of a couple of the school districts had some really interesting questions about it, of implementation for sure, but also like, hey, do we feel great about graduating 12th graders who don't, haven't learned how to use a phone as a tool in addition to as a toy? It's like, oh, that is not really a perspective that I had thought of before. Bell-to-bell ban, again, as a parent, that made sense to me. But hearing different voices in my community was really useful. And this story was so interesting to us, we're actually spinning it off into the first event that we're doing for the Dispatch. So we're going to do a live panel discussion of pulling together some administrators, some people who work in the school district, a social worker who works in the school district, parents, and then students themselves to say, hey, look, we're all in the same community here. This is an important and changing issue. How do we all feel about what the policies have been, the opportunity for evolving how things are going, and take it kind of out of comment section and out of just online dialogue into a live sit in the room conversation.
Right, and you have a website and people who want to just get a feel for the paper, you could check the website. What's the website?
That's right. It is rivertownsdispatch.com.
And you also have active sports pages.
We sure do. Yeah.
Do people like sports more than news, do you think?
No, I don't think so. I think there's everybody likes to see their own stuff and interest covered in the papers. Everyone particularly, I think, likes to see it when it's their kids. It's really important to us to have sports coverage at the high school level. It's been a real interesting year. The Ardsley girls just won their sectional champ. We have that covered in this week's paper. So I think fortunately, it's not zero sum. We can have news and sports covered, and both are super important.
And you also have featured students who have academically succeeded.
Yeah.
So if somebody wins a Regeneron competition,
That's right.
you've done features on them.
Yep.
And that also is great. You know, I was sort of thinking, without local publications, a lot of students are really shortchanged, because when I was growing up, if I did something really nice, got in the papers, and my parents were really proud. And students without a local weekly publication are missing out, and the parents are also missing out.
Yeah, absolutely. The scrapbook contingent is really important for us.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's great. So we only have about another minute left, and I'm wondering if I left out anything.
No, thank you so much for having me. I hope your readers, listeners learned something about this, and would love to have you subscribe at rivertownsdispatch.com/membership. Thank you so much. It's the community that's going to keep this thing alive. So thank you.
Great, and even if you don't live in the Rivertowns, you still could learn, because it's always
Absolutely.
nice to see what's happening in a neighboring community. And we could, those of us in unincorporated Greenburgh could steal from the best of what's happening in the river villages of
Please.
Greenburgh, which is still part of Greenburgh. So thanks so much for what you've done, and I really look forward to reading all the publications, and I've gotten like tons of ideas just from reading your paper.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.